Welcome to episode 630 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Ian Hilton, and nobody likes to go into the international break, dropping 3 points in the Liga and showing some cracks, showing some weaknesses. That's what we got to dive into. That's what we got to talk about. Whether Barcelona are winning, as they've done so many times this season, or losing, please help me on the channel on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, or if you're listening on the podcast apps, always give me a good rating. At any point, it's always helpful. Just say some nice things on the podcast apps in the rating, especially on Apple Music or on Spotify. It's a big help. Checking out the merch store, which I do have some cool stuff planned for that in the near future. So the merch store is also always a big help. Or Patreon, as low as $3. You can become with a camera and a microphone. You're immediately, without any vetting, on my watch-along live streams on Big Up. Or you also get these shows without the ads for as low as $3 on Patreon. So with all that done, let's dive in. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 1-0 loss to Real Sociedad. Headline 1 is Bayato. I got to be honest, I only had about a half of an eye on that first half. I was able to catch up with the highlights a little bit later, had to start the watch along a little bit late as well. So the first half is kind of muddy to me, but I kind of got what I needed in that one moment in the 13th minute. The ref is going to be under criticism, but it's not even the ref that should be under criticism for this 13th minute goal that wasn't a goal for Barcelona. It's the VAR. It's a line-breaking pass from Cubarsí to De Jong, really good from Cubarsí as usual. De Jong then carried the ball forward with the ball bouncing around. Yes, it wasn't a perfect pass from De Jong, but Lewandowski with those predatory instincts catches it in the air, beats the La Real keeper. Unfortunately for Barcelona, it is taken off the board by VAR, just barely offside, and maybe the closest offside we've ever seen, because it's by the tip of a foot. The question that's going all around is, was this even Lewandowski's foot, or was this a defender's foot? And if it's a defender's foot, then this is absolutely wrong by VAR. My question is, maybe VAR has to guarantee that it is the defender's foot, because if we're not even sure, then there was no way that they could have overturned this because this was a goal. It had to be clear and obvious, so if it's clear and obvious that that is Lewandowski's foot, which I've also said this many, many times, that's not what the rule is for, and I would love if they changed the language in this where if it gives, and now this is where it's going to get really dicey, but they should put in the rules that if it does give an advantage to the attacking player. And this kind of foot, while the rest of his body is behind the defender's body and just the tip of his foot is in front of the defender, that's not giving him a clear and obvious advantage. He still had to score the goal, especially because it wasn't on the exact shot that it happened. The ball still bounced around a bunch, so this is not what the rule is about, but whatever. That was a good sign, though, that Barcelona are finding the back of the net. So even though they were playing like utter trash to start the game, at least maybe it was a silver lining that Barca could do that again. Here's the bad news. That shot was on target, but it was wiped off the board. That would have been the only shot that Barcelona had on target in this match, because they wound up with 0 in the match as far as their shots on target. That's a spoiler alert, but again, if you watch this and you're watching this, you know all that. So let's get into some of those more negative headlines. Headline 2 is Becker beats Barça. It didn't take too long after that for Real Sociedad to find their goal. And I'm going to make excuses for Barcelona here. With the weather and all that stuff, which Real Sociedad were also playing in, I know that, sure. But this goal to me is chalked up almost by the weather as much as Barcelona being in a funk and playing poorly. A lot of different players made a mistake on this goal that allowed it to happen. First, that ball out of the back, that was kind of a clear intended for Lewandowski. It was a bit too far for him, so he didn't even get a chance on that 50-50 to try to keep it on Real Sociedad's half of the field. Casado then doesn't win the 50-50, which is not something that usually happens in that kind of position on the field. And then Cubarsí slips, as Casado didn't win the 50-50. How often has that happened this season where Cubarsí slips and is out of position as Casado doesn't win the 50-50, and then Becker gets in behind because Koundé did not track his run. How many times has Koundé not tracked a run from a forward this season in totality? And then Becker finished it coolly, so still credit to him. But a lot went wrong. A lot of players are to blame on this first goal and only goal for Real Sociedad. So I'm not too worried about Barcelona's back line bending and breaking, and the offside trap is an issue. I don't want to hear any of that. There were some issues for Barcelona, as in individually, they kind of stunk. Collectively, they kind of stunk in that first half, and Real Sociedad did at least deserve their goal. They could have made it 2, though, and this is where I think Barcelona, if they conceded more, I would have been more concerned about everything, but it was also on Real Sociedad that they didn't score more. First half extra time, or the ball close to it, Kubo making it all happen, Because Lamine Yamal was not in this game, which we'll talk about in a second, Kubo, that being the former Takefusa Kubo, well, still current Takefusa Kubo is still his name, but former La Masia player in Kubo, he was really the only guy in this game that felt like they could dribble past anybody or get by anybody or make a man miss. Almost did it a little bit in the second half, but Kubo really in that first half was the one who kind of set the tone of this match, making it happen. Becker gets it out wide, and then a good pass into Orzabal that he should have finished at that back post, but he missed it, trying to go back across Iñaki Peña's wide open goal. Doesn't happen, so Barcelona can move to the second half with a little bit of hope, but they had to pick it up if they were going to get a result in this game. Headline 3 is Flick takes out Frenkie. I know that the comment section, if I didn't talk about Frenkie de Jong from the first half, is going to be filled with that Frenkie de Jong chatter about how culpable we'll call him in this loss. I think there was a difference of what I've seen and heard from the first 27 minutes of Frenkie de Jong, where I already mentioned that positive moment he had in the 13th on the goal that was taken off for VAR. But then after he seemed to take a knock, that was an issue. And physically, like I kind of made the excuse for him against Red Star, even more so than Gabi. We kind of knew if Gabi was able to play, if the knee was working, all those things, that mentally Gabi seems just fine. Maybe he is still working back too. He only comes in the second half of games. We haven't really seen him for a start or a long set amount of time. So maybe Gabi still has some issues, but mentally and physically, it looks like Gabi's okay as he's going to regain his match fitness. For de Jong, he just doesn't look right. Physically, yes, but also between the ears as well. After he picks up that knock, even when he was on the ball, Frenkie de Jong and Castado completing 25 successful passes in the first half just wasn't good enough, and maybe Frenkie de Jong did rush himself back. Ronald Koeman did say that he doesn't trust his muscles all the way yet at the moment. He also looked worse, as I said, after the knock, which could be given as the reason for the almost switch. So maybe a cop-out for de Jong that it wasn't necessarily his play that took him out of that game, but merely they picked up a knock and then tried to play through it. So people did get their wish, though. Danny Olmo coming on at halftime for Frenkie de Jong, and almost everybody also going back where they belong. So with de Jong on the field, that's the bigger question for me moving forward as to if you need a win and if you're not looking to rotate, Pedri as the 10, is that really the best option when Olmo and Fermin Lopez are better 10s at that position? And really it was Fermin Lopez today who was sacrificed in his best position, having to play out on the wing there. Really wasn't the best day from him either, but he definitely was giving effort, that being Fermin Lopez, especially defensively. Just wasn't working for him out on the wing. He belongs in the middle of the field, which again, if you're going to start Pedri as a 10, that means Olmo and Fermin Lopez coming off the bench. Someone's going to be out of position, and Pablo Torre's not going to get any minutes in that game at all because there's nowhere to put him on the field. And a lot of that has to do with Lamine Yamal being unavailable for this game, so let's hit headline 4 with that. Headline 4 is spamming without Lamine Yamal. I think the biggest excuse that Barcelona should make, but they shouldn't. If you're missing a 17-year-old, you have to have a plan B, C, and D, and they didn't without Lamine Yamal. A lot of spamming of crosses in this game, but I think Barcelona in that second half still got their chances. 50th minute, Kubarsi at the back post with that mask, almost found the equalizer, just wide on the set piece. 51st minute almost comes right down Barcelona's throat again. Iñaki Peña, who was not good today with the ball at his feet, made the mistake on the clear, but he made up for it with the tip over. Then the 52nd minute, another thing goes against Barca, the yellow for Inigo Martinez on Kubo. The ref did play the advantage, and Becker almost scored. Probably should have had his brace there. Barcelona were definitely struggling with Real Sociedad press. I think it had to do, as I said, with the rain. They were just off. They weren't combining well together in the middle of the field, and if you're not going to control the middle of the field, again, maybe looking at Zubamendi and how well he played today and saying, well, Barcelona, I understand why you wanted him. And you also understand why Zubamendi knew that if he was going to leave Real Sociedad, they would have been like a boat without a paddle. And Zubamendi certainly, at least for re-signing for Real Sociedad, showed that he was committed to his club in a match like this where he was good. 55th minute, felt like Barcelona finally found the game in the second half. That sustained pressure, all the good things you want to see from Barcelona, Olmo turning well, finding space between the lines, and things were finally happening. The crosses were coming in, almost got an own goal that the keeper saved, Olmo to Fermin, but he whacked it way over. And then with Real Sociedad on the ropes, they needed something to change. And with Barcelona spamming those crosses, you felt like something good was going to happen. But here come the substitutions, and I don't hate it from Alguacil at all, putting in 4 of your 5 possible subs and changing up that game. The press had worked, but guys are starting to tire. So when Barcelona found the game, the subs, I thought for Real Sociedad, just reestablished that energy and that effort they were going to need to finish this one off with about 35 minutes remaining. Now let's talk about Lamine Yamal as well, unavailable for this one. Hansi Flick said beforehand that he was close, but that ankle injury that he sustained against Red Star Belgrade midweek, again, sounds like he was close to being available, but definitely expect to see him after the international break. But I think what we're going to talk about over the international break is whether or not Barcelona are the same thing that they were last season without Lamine Yamal. And what can they do if the 17-year-old has to miss, maybe not for this ankle injury, but has to miss any big amount of time? Because the crossing wasn't good enough. The final ball for Barcelona certainly wasn't good enough today. And you can blame a lot of different things, especially not having Lamine Yamal. But there are, I think, some bigger issues and weaknesses that you see in Barcelona's attacking game plan without Lamine Yamal. And then headline 5 is Slipped Up. Shout out in the watch along to Z Meister for giving me this idea. I think Slipped Up perfectly encapsulates everything we talked about. Barcelona in the rain were slipping up. They slipped up at the back and conceded a goal, and they slipped up in the league table and dropped 3 points that they should have felt like at least they should have got a draw there in the second half, but they weren't able to get any points out of this one. After the 3 assists from Koundé against Red Star, this was not his best game with the pass tonight. Koundé got caught on a set piece with Berenshea in the second half, getting him behind. Fortunately for Koundé, Berenshea couldn't finish, but yeah, Koundé, probably his worst game of the season, I'd say. 69th minute, Ansu Fati on for Fermin Lopez, which I thought was a good idea, putting a winger on the wing, but was Ansu Fati really the answer? Has he been the answer? What is he going to need to be the answer? I think a lot of the pundits, and you know me, I would refuse to admit this, but this Ansu that we saw today is kind of the same Ansu that I watched at Brighton last season in all the minutes that I could watch for him. It just looks like he is not that player. You know, if you're watching on the stream, but I'll say it with audio, that by that player, I mean the player that is of a level that can contribute to FC Barcelona the way that Fermin Lopez does. Right now, Ansu Fati is that step down. He's not necessarily a player that I don't trust. His ceiling is higher than it's been, but every match he goes out there, unfortunately for him, we're not just saying like Koundé, this is a bad match from him, throw it away because you know he'll rebound. But Ansu Fati, I don't know if he's going to rebound because he hasn't had that match that proves that he isn't the player that he has been. And it's going to take a few of those good matches to prove that he is not the player that he has now been for almost 2 years since he's even come back. And that's, again, still just frustrating to see from Ansu. 84th minute, Gavi on for Koundé to close it out, so Hansi Flick going for it. And obviously, it was an all-out blitz late from Barcelona, but they just, as I just said in that fourth headline, could not get that final ball working. There was a moment around the 81st minute, players were all going downhill, but nobody got a good look, nobody got a shot on target, and nobody had that final ball. Rafinha slipping in the 89th minute kind of summed up the whole game. It felt like a last gasp before stoppage time for Barca. Doesn't happen. Pau Victor in for Pedri in stoppage time, looking for a miracle, but yeah, the excuses were built in. So, Barcelona needed to be better. I'll say that. The excuses are built in. It was a lot of rain. I know Real Sociedad would also play in the rain, but there's something about playing at home that Real Sociedad were emboldened to play with more energy and effort. And how many balls knocked off the shins of Dani Olmo and Lewandowski, and then, again, without Lamine Yamal to deliver those final balls. I also want to take a little bit of culpability here. I missed watching the first half live. I missed doing the watch along. I was doing another game. So I ran home, sprinted in the door, threw on the watch along for the second half. And yeah, Barcelona played a little bit better, but yeah, maybe that's on me for missing that first half. For Barcelona, they said they also slipped up in the league table, but they are still up on Madrid by 6 points. They do, that being Madrid, have a game in hand against Valencia. Our thoughts, again, still with the victims of that flood, as that whole community looks to recover from the devastating flood from last week. But yeah, Barcelona's still up by 6 points, but really, you have to say it's probably 3 points with the way that Valencia have been playing this season and the way that Real Madrid are starting to round into form a little bit, except not in the Champions League just yet. So yeah, I probably shouldn't be making fun of Real Sociedad on a day that Barcelona dropped points. And I think now you're going to see a lot of negativity. Hansi Flick is really the guy during this international break that I've got all ears and eyes on, because I'm going to see how he reacts to what will be negativity until that match in 2 weeks' time against Celta de Vigo. So how will Hansi Flick, especially in the media, deal with the negativity for the next 2 weeks or so? This is really the first, we'll say, PR challenge that Hansi Flick has had so far this season. There's a lot to talk about. I do plan on doing a tactical analysis on Big Up, so not really a watch-along, but a tactical analysis midweek, and expect to hear from at least one of our friends on the podcast with a long talk about what's happening with Barcelona, the highs and lows, and anything else we can get into as well over this international break. So everybody, do take care of yourself, please, as the weather gets colder and, flu shots and all those different things. If I can do anything to help you with that, just give a little bit of positivity for everyone to stay healthy and happy. And yeah, let's not get too bent out of shape. It's a 1-0 loss to Real Sociedad on the road. This happens a lot, and it's happened aplenty in seasons where Barcelona has won the Liga title. So again, subscribe to the channel, help me out, Patreon, Discord, closed Facebook group, on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, the merch store, all the different places to find me as well on Big Up with the watch alongs and the tactical analysis and all the fun that we have over there. So that'll do it for another 5 headlines. I will talk to you soon. And as always, Forza Barça.